Hi, and welcome to MiWeek. I'm Stephen Henderson, sitting in for Christy McDonald. We have a full table tonight as we take on the biggest headlines of the week. From Washington, there's the controversy surrounding President Trump that has a Michigan congressman using the word impeachment. Plus, we'll examine the role of the press and the perspective of trust in government. Also tonight, some headlines from Michigan, including a follow-up in the case of a young Detroit woman who is days away from deportation. That's all coming up. So let's get started. Our regular contributor, Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, is off tonight. Welcome back, Aaron Einhorn, who's a former politics editor for the New York Daily News and now founding editor of Chalkbeat Detroit. Also back with us is Daniel Howes, a columnist with the Detroit News. And here for the first time is Kim Trent from the Wayne State Board of Governors. She's also a policy associate with Michigan Future Incorporated. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So nothing going on. I don't know what we're going to talk about tonight. Daniel, I want to start with you. We did see Congressman Justin Amash come out this week and say, hey, all of this stuff that we're learning about Donald Trump is concerning to me. And he says if he's guilty of these things, impeachment might be the way we need to go. I think this is a test for Republican congressmen. We heard from Justin Amash. We heard from Fred Upton. Where's Mike Bishop? Where's Dave
I think
Trott?
a lot of these guys are just putting their heads down and hoping this is going to go away, hoping it doesn't. Some of this stuff doesn't check out. But clearly, this president has. I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. I have never in my adult life seen more screw-ups out of a new administration. And
at the state or the federal level.
But I have to say, I have an own personal rule. I call it House Rule 104. Thou shalt not give thine enemies a club to beat me with, which you, as writing a column, know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
and this White House and this president specifically hands out those clubs rhetorically daily.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a test for Republicans, and I think they will pay if they. One of the things that is supposed to have been part of that party has been the ability to discern right from wrong, and the ability to call balls and strikes, and they're not doing it so far.
Yeah, I mean, Kim, as someone who worked in a Democratic administration, and you've seen this before, that there are times when you have to stand up and condemn somebody, even in your own party, because they're doing things that just aren't right, and that it's always a test. It's always hard.
Well, happily, I don't think I've ever had to justify this level of.
Well, think about when Kwame Kilpatrick, for instance, when he was in deep trouble.
He was a Democrat, yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes, he was.
We can still admit that.
Right,
probably still is.
Right.
That's right. But I mean, you know, I feel like if you're in a life of politics, you always come across these kinds of troubles, and you gotta sort of have that moral compass.
But I think, you know, really, if we're going to use Kwame Kilpatrick as a measuring stick for this,
not the same.
Not the same. Sure, certainly, his foibles are, you know, historians will be looking back at them for, you know, decades to come. And, you know, as a Democrat, of course, that was a difficult situation for any of us to be in. But he did not threaten the entire basis of democracy,
the whole republic,
the presidency, how we look at leadership. This is really a test of who we are as Americans. And, you know, it's a cliche to say, are you going to put country above party? But I mean, this has got to be the most pressing, you know, real life example of a time where people really have to look at the untold damage that we really could sustain as a country if we don't do the right thing about
it's certainly in
at
our
least looking into these allegations.
Well, it's a test of our institutions, and I would submit to you that so far they're performing fairly well. I think that's very important.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little worried about justice and the Justice Department and the interference there, but I think otherwise you're
I think the naming of Robert Mueller as a special counsel certainly is a step in the right direction.
Moving that back in the right place. That's right.
You know, I think that's really important.
Yeah, Aaron.
I mean, I think it's really if you're a politician and you reach the end of your life, you know, do you want the first line of your obituary to be, you know,
didn't stand up?
No, or you know, she was loyal to her party to the end. You know, like she really paid her dues and worked her way up and like, you know, kept her mouth shut when like stuff got difficult. So that's really the question. And I don't know. I mean, you know, I sort of feel like if I were in elected office, I guess it's easier when you're a journalist and you're sitting on the sidelines, you know, passing judgment. But you want to believe that you want your leaders to be people who believe in something.
Yeah.
So
I mean, right here in Michigan, like I said, we have Amash and Upton out saying the right things, I think. We have a lot of other Republican congressmen who don't seem to be able to find their way to that.
Well, we're talking about a different kind of White House here, though. I mean, there's been a political price to pay for people that speak up against this president. Now, he may begin to lose his potency a little bit. But you know, we've got to see how this all plays out, and if you're calling for investigations, let the investigations play out, and see where the evidence leads.
So the other thing that really rankles me about this is, so Donald Trump's doing all kinds of things that are just, I mean, I think just mind-blowing. They blow your hair back, and it is almost every day. You think back to 8 years ago when we had a new president, the first black president, and the way he was treated for much different things. This double standard that plays out is just, it's one of the things that's just got me sort of jumping out of my chair every night watching the television.
Even today we saw the president tweeting that no other, or I guess this was yesterday, I can't even keep track of his Twitter musings, but where he made the statement that, you know, no other president has ever faced this kind of political witch
in history.
In history. Oh, in history.
In history.
I mean, and this is a man who spent a great portion of his time as a private citizen accusing the president of the United States of not being an American. I mean, what worse insult can you lay at the foot of a sitting president than that he lied about his very identity as an American?
Right, to get the job.
You know, it's just the irony, the hypocrisy. It's really stunning.
Well, it's a selective outrage. I mean, that's, I think, at the end of the day. I mean, you know, I had some real issues with Hillary Clinton and the server, and I think the potential way she may have exposed the country to national security threats, potentially.
Yeah.
I'm just as critical of Trump in that regard as I was of her. I think we need more people in the public space that are going to call balls and strikes and not do it through a partisan prism.
Well, and I think the problem is that the problem for Republicans now is that the president's core support just doesn't seem shaken by
Well, you know what?
stuff.
Remember during the election, during the campaign season, when he said something like, "I can go out in the middle of the street and shoot someone, and nothing would happen."
And no one would.
Little did we know how that was not as hyperbolic as we thought it was. I mean, what can this man do for people to say, maybe this wasn't the best choice for leader of the free world?
Well, the other question is, can he get anything done in his administration?
Right.
And that's
Bingo.
He still wants to do health care, tax reform, all these other agendas, all of which have, I mean, who knows?
No one's talking about any of that stuff.
And no one will.
Yeah.
And until this investigation, which could go on for years, basically for the rest of his
Well,
term.
I did see the Koch brothers are now mobilized to try to make sure that the tax plan stays on track.
They've
but
never been a fan of Donald Trump.
They're not, but I think that they see, you know, the one
saw
thing
the market. The market sold off 370 points on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think that's all tied to exactly what Aaron just said.
Is that people are fearful that things aren't going to get
That
done.
the tax reform and regulatory reform that you got in the Trump bounce of 2,000 points after election is going to evaporate.
Right, and I think, you know, that core support eventually will shake over those things, right? That they expect certain things out of this administration. If they don't start seeing them in sort of substantive ways, maybe they move, and that gives a little more play in the joints to the leadership in the House and the Senate. But until then, you know, I think they're a little stuck. I mean, you can't come out against this president, I think, and not anger his supporters. I know that because every time I say anything on the radio or TV or in the newspaper about it, I mean, they are still rabidly in his corner.
But I think you answer your question about why others aren't coming out. I mean, Justin Amash is an outlier within the delegation.
Right, and agree or disagree with him, you know, he's consistent. He says and does things according to his beliefs and not always according to party. We need more people like that. All right.